Lisset Gomez is an environmental engineer with expertise in solid waste management. She served as a national supervisor at OEFA, Peru's environmental enforcement agency. Lisset is also the co-founder of BCG Solutions and a member of the College of Engineers of Peru. She supports sustainability and community empowerment efforts through international nonprofit work.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. It's truly a pleasure and an honor to be here. Today, I want to share with you this topic called open dump sites versus waste infrastructure, the role of supervision in Peru. Why does this matter beyond borders? Because when we talk about environmental issues, everything on our planet is connected. That's why tools like an environmental supervision, which are used by governments everywhere. Let's take a look at these images. What do they show us? It is open dump sites. These are places where waste is just thrown on the ground with no control, no protection, and no proper management. So the question is, are there environmental standards that regulate this? The answer is yes. In many countries, including Peru, there are rules about how waste should be managed, but the reality is not every place follows them. And here's something important. Waste can be hidden, not like we do with us under the rug. Eventually, it comes back in pollution, bad smells, or even disease. That's why proper waste management matters. This presentation explores the urgent need to close open dump sites and transition towards proper solid waste infrastructure in Latin America and the Caribbean, hereafter LAC, with a specific focus on Peru in South America. We'll take a closer look at the crucial role of environmental supervision and compliance in Peru. So let's go through it step by step. To start with the general overview, it's important to highlight that LAC actually generates less waste than developed countries. The average per capita waste generation is around 1 kilogram per day, which is about 1/7 of what's produced in a country like Australia. But the real issue isn't how much we generate, it's how we manage it. In LAC, about 1/3 of urban solid waste ends up in open dumps, and around 70% of local governments still rely on this uncontrolled dump sites or even burning, mainly because they don't have proper infrastructure. At the same time, projections show that the total waste will increase by 25%, and recycling rates are still very low, under 10%. So, as you can see, this is not just a waste problem, it's an environmental challenge that's growing every year. Now, let's look at the case of Peru, located in South America. Peru is no exception to this regional reality. Every day, the country generates almost 24,000 tons of municipal solid waste. And what's more, 56% of this organic waste, which is very important to note. Why? Because when this waste is not properly managed, it contributes to greenhouse gas emissions, mainly methane and carbon dioxide. In fact, in Peru, the final disposal of municipal solid waste releases about 6.47 million tons of carbon dioxide equivalent each year. That makes organic waste the main contributor to these emissions. This graph highlights a gap between areas degraded by solid waste and the existing waste infrastructure across Peru, especially outside Lima, our capital. According to the national inventory, there are only 719 waste facilities compared to 2017 open dump sites. This reflects an urgent need to invest in formal infrastructure. While 79% of these facilities are for valorization, only 19%, about 133, are for final disposal. Yet, despite this focus on recovery, actual recycling remains very low, around 2%. revealing a mismatch between infrastructure type and performance. So the question is, what exactly are open dump sites? According to international guidelines, open dump sites are places where waste is disposed without any control. They have no bottom lining, no leachate treatment, no gas capture system, no daily cover, and no real security. They are often found near informal settlements or vulnerable areas. Now, in Peru, we have our own definition. According to national regulations, we call them areas degraded by solid waste, or ADSW. These are permanent waste accumulation sites, and I want to stress that, permanent. They usually operate without any technical standards or with minimal infrastructure, but no environmental management instrument, or with some technical operations but lacking official environmental permits. So for the purpose of this presentation, we will say open dump sites when referring to what Peruvian law defines as an area degraded by solid waste. So, what are the main impacts of open dump sites? As we can see in these images, these effects are quite serious. First, there is air pollution caused by smoke, suspended particles, and toxic gases from burning waste. Then the soil gets contaminated when it comes into direct contact with the waste and leachate, which is that dark liquid that drains from the waste. Also, this leachate can reach rivers, lakes, or even underground water sources, contaminating them too. And of course, open dumps create bad smells, foul odors that affect the surrounding communities. But that's not all. There are serious human health impacts and cause social conflicts. For instance, the presence of informal waste pickers who separate and recover recyclables directly inside these open dump sites, often without any protective equipment or sanitary conditions. Another example, in some parts of Peru, people protest because they don't want their towns to become the dumping ground for a whole city. They often confuse a sanitary landfill, which is a controlled infrastructure, with an open dump. So, in response to this problem, it's essential to implement proper waste infrastructure, which includes several components. First, valorization infrastructure, which refers to chemical or biological process used to recover valuable materials or transform solid waste into reusable resources. Second, transfer station, where waste is moved from small collection vehicles to larger trucks for more efficient transportation. Third, treatment plants, which provide preliminary treatment for hazardous waste before final disposal. And final disposal infrastructure, which includes sanitary landfills, hazardous waste landfills, and inert waste disposal sites. Now, let's talk about the benefits of having proper waste infrastructure. First, one key co-benefit is emissions reduction. According to UNEP, capturing landfill gas can help to reduce up to 45% of methane emissions this decade. In fact, ISWA funded high-income countries reduce methane emissions by 20 to 35% thanks to good infrastructure. Second, it helps with the resource recovery. Waste infrastructure like composting plants and recycling centers make it easier to recover material and give them a second life. This reduces the pressure on natural resources. And third, it promotes formal jobs, especially for informal recyclers. So, infrastructure is just about building or landfills. It's also about good planning, proper service, and making sure the accountability. Now, let's look at the main challenges. We face issues like low coverage and territorial inequality, especially between urban and rural areas. Also, many facilities are inadequate or already overloaded. But today, I want to focus on two key challenges. First, the persistence of open dump sites, and second, the weak maintenance and operation of existing facilities. These 2 points have direct environmental and social consequences and can be addressed with strong environmental supervision. So, in the next slides, we will see how and why. Here, in these images, we can see the absence of gas treatment systems in valorization infrastructure. And that's a serious concern because when organic waste is decomposed without proper control, it releases methane that is 18 times more potent than carbon dioxide in the short term. Also, you can see tanks that are leaking. This causes soil contamination with hydrocarbons, which can affect surrounding areas, including water sources. So that brings us to a key question. How do we make sure these facilities work the way they should? The answer is through environmental supervision. Supervision plays a fundamental role in ensuring compliance with environmental obligations. Enables 3 key functions. Prevention, by identifying risk early and promoting corrective measures, we avoid environmental degradation and health impacts before they occur. Dissuasion, by applying sanctions or legal measures when necessary. Supervision discourages non-compliance and promotes accountability. Control, by monitoring ongoing activities, we can detect environmental damage already happening and take action to stop or mitigate it. In this way, supervision is not just reactive, it's also a strategic tool to strengthen the long-term performance and sustainability of waste management systems. Now, let's see how environmental supervision works in Peru. This mandate is carried out by OEFA, by its acronym in Spanish, the Environmental Assessment and Enforcement Agency. It's an autonomous institution under the Ministry of the Environment and is responsible for ensuring that environmental obligations linked to economic activities are fulfilled. OEFA performs 3 key functions: evaluation, which refers to surveillance and monitoring of environmental components; supervision, which means verifying compliance with environmental obligations; and enforcement, which involves investigating possible administrative violations and imposing penalties or sanctions if necessary. When it comes to solid waste, OEFA supervises impacts and, when applicable, sanctions in waste infrastructure, temporary waste cells, and open dump sites, whether they are under recovery or reconversion processes. In addition, OEFA supervises but doesn't sanction the implementation of municipal waste management plans. Lastly, OEFA is also responsible for developing, managing, and updating national inventories, such as the inventory of degraded areas in waste infrastructure, which we'll talk about in more detail later. Now, let's take a closer look at how environmental supervision works in practice. Supervision means verifying these sources, environmental management instruments, applicable environmental regulations, and administrative measures that have already been imposed. These obligations can be preventive, meaning they help avoid the environmental impact, or corrective, meaning they help mitigating the impact. But what happens when a high-risk situation is found? OEFA applies compliance promotion strategies. These include the signing of a commitment act or the imposition of an administrative measure, which is mandatory if there's risk or harm. These tools allow OEFA to respond quickly and encourage facilities to improve before more serious enforcement actions are needed. So at this point, how do we verify compliance in solid waste infrastructure? Each facility, whether for valorization, transfer, treatment, or final disposal, has a specific set of environmental commitments. These include perimeter fencing and sanitary buffers, waste weighing and registration systems, leachate and gas management systems, environmental monitoring and mitigation measures. As illustrated in the photos, these requirements are not merely administrative. They are essential operational standards that mitigate environmental and health risk. That's why environmental supervision plays a critical role in ensuring that each infrastructure type operates within the regulatory framework. Let's take a look at the concrete results of environmental supervision in 2022. According to the national report, Final Disposal of Municipal Solid Waste, OF identified 28% of operational deficiencies in final disposal infrastructure, FDI, and 51% in areas degraded by solid waste, ADSW. Starting on the left, we see that prior to intervention, 61% of FDI units had deficiencies related to the daily cover of solid waste. After supervision, that figure dropped to 32%, reducing the gap by almost 30 percentage points. This slide shows successful cases of supervision in both, but the most significant achievement in Peru is that supervision has prioritized the closure of open dump sites and their transition to former sanitary landfills. This progress has been possible not only because of enforcement, but also thanks to a series of regulatory and legal instruments, such as recovery and reconversion plans, required from local governments. In addition, the Ministry of the Environment has played a key role in coordinating efforts, often supported by international funding, to prioritize the implementation of final disposal infrastructure in high-risk or critical cities. This is another successful case, this time in a waste valorization facility. As we can see, the improvement includes impermeable and washable walls and floors, and proper leachate collection and storage system. These changes were made after signing a commitment as a part of the supervision process. Why is this important? Because in Peru, over 50% of municipal solid waste is organic, which means it can be treated through composting, for example. Also, around 22% is recyclable organic waste, so having proper valorization infrastructure is key if we want to reduce pressure on landfills, cut emissions, and move toward a more circular economy. So why waste inventories matter? They go beyond simple data collection. They provide a structured basis for planning, decision-making, and targeted interventions at both local and national levels. I invite you to check whether your own country has a national inventory system in place. It's a powerful tool, not just to measure the scale of the problem, but to start studying auditing. So, stranded waste infrastructure, we need an integrated approach. This means combining multi-sectoral approach, unlock alternative financing mechanisms, and warranty resources for the operation and maintenance infrastructure. Because building is only the beginning, operating it properly is the real change. On the other side, regulation plays a key role. We need to reinforce compliance with environmental obligation, provide capacity building through technical guidance, and most importantly, follow a roadmap for the progressive closure of open dump sites. As we move forward, we need to ask who really needs to be involved to make change happen. The answer is everyone. Key stakeholders like civil society, government institutions, universities and academia, and the private sector. Each of us, as citizens, has a fundamental role, and this role goes beyond borders and countries. It's truly a shared global responsibility. We are called to action, especially when it comes to following the waste management hierarchy. First, avoid and reduce waste generation, recover and valorize materials through infrastructure like composting or recycling, and only as a last resort, dispose of what can be reused or recovered. So yes, a strong infrastructure is important, but collaboration and citizen action are what truly make the system work. So for example, in Peru, there are other tools and programs that help improve waste management and support this multi-sectoral approach. One of them is the Recycle municipal recycling programs, which not only promotes waste separation at the source, but also supports the formalization of waste pickers, making their work safer, recognized, and more efficient. We also have the Municipal Incentive Program, specifically Commitment 3, which focuses on implementing an integrated solid waste management system. In addition, there are digital platforms that encourage citizen participation. For instance, in ADA, where people track and submit environmental complaints. Also, the Report Waste mobile app allows users to report waste hotspots, and together, these tools make waste management more effective, transparent, and inclusive, because managing waste isn't only a technical issue, it's a matter of shared responsibility. So everything we've seen, from inventories to supervision tools and multi-sectoral efforts, lead us to this. Waste infrastructure is not just about managing today's challenges. It's about shaping a sustainable future, modernizing systems with clean technologies, ensuring proper operation, and involving citizens, and waste pickers are essential steps toward circular and inclusive waste management. To grow up, let's remember this. Solid waste infrastructure is a pillar for achieving environmental justice, but having infrastructure isn't enough. It only works when properly operated and maintained. That's why supervision plays a critical role. It ensures that these systems function effectively, that standards are met, and that harm to health and ecosystem is avoided. Ultimately, if we want sustainable waste management, we need more than just facilities. We need a system built on clear regulation, strong oversight, and collaboration between sectors. This is how we support global goals: SDG 9 on infrastructure and innovation, SDG 11 on sustainable cities, and SDG 13 on climate action. And with that, I like to close my highlighting this idea. Waste sorting technologies exist, but nothing is as effective as citizen collaboration. So yes, we need investment, regulation, supervision, but most of all, we need people who care, who get involved, and who take action. Thank you so much for your attention.